This happened almost 8 years ago. I was 31 and had just moved to a small town to find some peace after a chaotic life in the city. I thought a quiet place might help me focus on my freelance graphic design career. I was settling in when I noticed that old Victorian house at the end of my street. It had been forgotten and looked eerie, but I was curious. I've never stopped thinking about it. On my first night, I noticed flickering lights in the house. I thought maybe someone was inside, but the windows looked empty. I heard a noise, like furniture sliding, and it made me jump. Maybe kids were messing around, but I didn't want to be distracted. I put in my earbuds and tried to work. As the weeks passed, strange things happened. I often heard footsteps in the attic late at night. I'd sit frozen in my chair, hoping it was just my imagination. I saw silhouettes moving behind the grime-covered windows. My heart raced whenever I glanced over. I wanted to understand it all, but a part of me felt scared to go near that house. One evening, I stepped outside for some fresh air. I found a dusty children's toy on my porch. It was a small teddy bear, frayed at the edges. I was alone in the neighborhood, and I didn't understand how it got there. I picked it up with shaking hands. Its eyes seemed to follow me, and I felt a chill. Maybe it was a prank, but I couldn't shake the dread that settled in my stomach. That I decided to ask around about the house. I thought maybe a neighbor knew something. That's when I learned about its tragic past. I found out a family had lived there years ago and had a terrible accident. I think that's what made the house feel so heavy. Still, part of me wanted to explore it. Late one night, I stood in front of the Victorian house, staring at the closed door. My heart hammered as I thought of knocking. I didn't want to open it, yet my curiosity kept pushing me forward. The porch creaked under my weight, and I hesitated. I thought I heard my name whispered through the air, but maybe I was just imagining it. Then the streetlights flickered, and I took a step back. I felt cold as I turned away. Had I really imagined it all, or was there something in that house watching me? After 8 years, the memories still haunt me. I can't shake the feeling that the house is still there, eyes peering through the dust, waiting for someone to uncover its secrets. I'm not sure why I can't let it go. I think maybe it left a part of itself with me. Then, there was that night. I was home alone, and that same whisper filled the air again. I heard it clearly this time, just above a hush, Claire. I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. I looked around my empty room, but nothing was there. I didn't know what to think. The house at the end of the street stared back at me, dark and silent. The door sat closed, but I felt it silently calling me, weaving itself deeper into my mind. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clung to me. I kept thinking about the voice that whispered my name. I found it odd, haunting even. I decided it was time to visit the library. Maybe I could discover more about the house's history. The local library was small, dusty, and smelled like old paper. I approached the librarian, a woman with glasses perched on her nose. I asked about the Victorian house. Her expression changed immediately, her eyes narrowing. "Why do you want to know?" she asked cautiously. I hesitated, unsure how to explain my fascination. I told her about the strange occurrences, the flickering lights, the whispers, and the teddy bear. As I spoke, her brow furrowed deeper. "Many people have been frightened by that house," she finally said. "Some say they hear things that shouldn't be there." "What kind of things?" I pressed. She glanced over her shoulder, as if ensuring no one was listening. "There were children once. They're a part of the house now, in a way." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Children?" "Yes. The family, 2 kids lost their lives in that house. It said they wander, trapped in a place that once was their home." I nodded, feeling an unsettling mix of fear and curiosity. "Can I see any records about the family?" Her eyes softened, and she led me to a corner of the library where old newspapers were archived. I sifted through the papers, finding articles about the tragic accident. I read about the fire that consumed the house, leaving nothing but memories behind. I learned the family's names and the tender ages of the children. Something in me pulled harder to the house, like a magnet. I felt empathy for those lost souls. I didn't just want to know their story, I wanted to help them. Later that evening, I stood again before the Victorian house, the sun setting behind it, casting long shadows. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the night ahead. Without thinking, I reached for the doorknob. My heart raced again. I turned the knob, and to my surprise, it clicked open. The door creaked as I stepped inside. The air felt thick, stagnant. The light from the setting sun barely penetrated the darkness. I glanced around, my hands clammy. Every floorboard creaked under my weight, but I pressed on, a sense of urgency pulling me deeper into the heart of the house. As I ventured further inside, something caught my eye. A shadow flickered past me. I shot my head around, but nothing was there. Just stillness, the kind that enveloped everything around you. Then I heard it again, faint but clear. It was a child's laughter, echoing from the attic above. My pulse quickened. There was no way I could ignore it now. I needed to find out what was happening. I began to climb the staircase, each step a reminder of the stories I had heard. The laughter grew louder, more playful. But was it inviting or warning me? Just as I reached the top, the laughter stopped abruptly. I stood in silence, uncertainty flooding my senses. Something wasn't right. That's when I saw it, a flickering light spilling out from a room at the end of the hallway, almost like an invitation into the unknown. And then everything went dark. I blinked a few times, trying to adjust to the darkness. My heart raced, hammering against my ribcage. I couldn't see my hands, let alone where I was, but I felt a pull, something beckoning me forward. I took a tentative step, my foot meeting the smooth, cold wood of the floor. The absence of light made every creak sound like a whisper. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling in the emptiness. No response. The silence wrapped around me, heavy and foreboding. I slowly made my way toward the flicker that had drawn me in, feeling along the wall for balance. My fingers brushed against rough wallpaper, and a tiny shiver raced down my spine. Then, just as I reached the door at the end of the hall, the flickering light returned, illuminating the edges of the door frame. I could see now a faint glow seeping through the cracks. I pushed the door open, the hinges protesting with a long, low groan. As I stepped inside, the room opened up into a vast, slightly cluttered space. Dust particles floated in the air, each caught in the wavering light of a lantern set on a small table in the corner. The flickering flame cast eerie shadows that danced across the walls. A chill ran through me, but curiosity kept me rooted in place. In the center of the room sat an old rocking chair, swaying gently despite the stillness around me. I approached it slowly, my breath hitching in my throat. I reached out a hand to touch the worn fabric of the chair, half expecting it to feel warm from a recent occupant. But it was cold and empty, as if no one had sat there for years. Suddenly, I heard muffled voices, children's voices behind me. Panic shot through me as I spun around. The laughter from before had returned, but it was different now, echoing, layered, as if a crowd of children were playing a game just out of sight. "Come play with us," they seemed to say, giggling and then fading to whispers. I felt my chest tighten. Some primal instinct told me to run, but my legs wouldn't listen. The room felt charged, alive with energy. Just as I thought I might burst from anxiety, the voices grew louder. A chilling realization washed over me, they were coming from behind the wall. I approached the side of the room where the laughter originated, pressing my ear against the wooden panel. "Help us." The voice now sounded desperate, and it broke my heart. I could feel a thickness in the air, as if the house itself was urging me to listen carefully. I opened my mouth to speak, "How can I help?" But no sound came out. There was a sudden crash that made me jump. A stack of old books toppled over in the corner, sending a few pages fluttering to the floor. One of them caught my eye. It lay open, staring back at me. I stepped closer, my heart burning with the need for answers. The room was quiet as I leaned down to read. And that's when I saw it, a family photo, tattered and yellowed with age. I recognized the children's faces from the newspaper articles, the same smiles that seemed to reach out from the past. But there was something more. I found a name beneath the photo, a name I didn't expect. My breath caught in my throat. Then, without warning, the room plunged into darkness again, this time more suffocating. I staggered back, disoriented. Something had changed. Someone was in the house. I froze as the darkness enveloped me. My gut twisted, the sound of my own breathing echoing in the silence. I strained to hear anything over the pounding in my ears, but the laughter had disappeared, replaced by an unsettling calm. "Is anyone there?" I called out, hoping for a response. Instead, I got silence. It made my skin crawl. I took a cautious step backward, but I bumped into the rocking chair, and it creaked ominously. The noise sent a jolt through me, and I whirled around, the lantern light flickering back on, illuminating the room once more, but something was different this time. A shadow flickered near the doorway, just a brief glimpse, but it felt alive. I felt my heart race again, and the hairs on my neck stood tall. "Hello?" I called again, my voice trembling, but deep inside, I was crying out for someone or something to tell me everything would be okay. I took a few hesitant steps toward the door. The air felt heavier now, and I half expected to feel a ghostly chill wrap around me. Instead, it was a weird warmth, almost inviting. Pushing the door open completely, I was met with another room, smaller but equally cluttered. More dust-covered furniture sat lifelessly. A massive mirror hung on the far wall, tarnished but somehow still reflecting the faint light. I moved closer, drawn by an inexplicable urge. As I gazed into the mirror, the reflection showed not only my own anxious face but something behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. I stared back at the mirror, heart racing. What was I seeing? Then I caught a glimpse of something in the corner. There it was again, a shadow, moving fluidly across the room. I took a hesitant step back. The laughter returned, echoing off the walls, and this time it sounded more energetic, more urgent. "Help us! Help us!" The voices seemed to swirl around me, and I could almost make out familiar melodies from long-ago games. Memories of my own childhood played in my mind, and I realized these weren't just strangers. They felt connected to me. I had to know more. I turned back to the mirror, breathing hard. I leaned in, whispering, "What do you want from me?" Suddenly, the reflection morphed. It shifted slowly, revealing a scene from the past, children laughing and playing in a yard, bright sunlight illuminating their joy. I recognized the faces, my own family from years ago, long gone. A sudden surge of longing washed over me, and the laughter began to fade again. Then, a loud knock echoed through the house, resonating like a gong. It sent me stumbling backward into an ornate table, knocking over an antique lamp. The glass shattered like a bomb, scattering shards around me. "No!" I screamed, my voice a mix of fear and desperation. The shadow in the corner coalesced into a figure, one I couldn't fully see, but I felt its presence cloaked in urgency. Understanding flooded me, but terror gripped my chest. I didn't know what to do. Before I could react, the flickering lantern went out entirely, plunging me into a thick darkness. In the distance, I heard the voices say, "Come find us." And then, everything went quiet. I stood frozen, surrounded by thick darkness. Fear wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, muffling my thoughts. I strained to remember the last moment of light, but all that lingered was the echo of those haunting voices. "Come find us." My instincts kicked in. I needed to move, to get out of this suffocating void. Using my hands, I cautiously felt for the wall, breathing deeply as I stumbled forward. I could still hear small fragments of laughter in the distance, beckoning me to follow. Finally, I spotted a sliver of moonlight spilling through a broken window. It illuminated the outline of furniture ahead, more dust-covered relics from a time long past. I crept toward it, carefully avoiding the sharp edges of scattered glass from the fallen lamp. As I reached the light, I could make out details: paintings hanging crookedly, faded photographs of unfamiliar faces peering back at me. I hesitated at one particularly eerie portrait of a girl with hollow eyes. Something about her felt wrong, like she was watching me. Suddenly, there was another knock, this time softer but deliberate. My heart raced, and I turned sharply towards the sound, my breath quickening as my surroundings plunged back into shadow. "Is someone here?" I called, forcing the words out despite the tremor in my voice. My throat felt dry as I scanned the space, searching for any hint of life. Nothing responded, and the silence almost felt mocking. Then, I noticed something on the floor, a small doll lying among the debris. It looked out of place, pristine despite the dust. I bent down, picking it up. The doll's eyes seemed to glimmer in the faint light, and my heart sank. I had brought my own doll here as a child, and I remembered losing it years ago. Panic surged. What else did I lose? I whispered, almost to myself. The laughter returned, now sounding more sinister, a twisted echo of joy that sent chills down my spine. The air thickened around me, suffocating and oppressive. "Help us!" The voices cried again, more desperate this time. It wasn't just laughter anymore, there was a pleading quality woven into the sound that made my stomach churn. "Who are you?" I shouted into the darkness, clutching the doll tightly. "What do you want from me?" At that moment, the mirror across the room caught my eye. It wasn't reflecting just light now. The surface shimmered, and images began to swirl within it. I took a step closer, my heart pounding. The faces of children appeared once again, but their expressions were twisted in fear. Then everything changed when I noticed a figure looming behind them, a tall shadow, darker than the night itself. It pointed directly at me through the mirror. A bone-deep terror seized me, and I stumbled backward, sending the doll tumbling from my grip. "Oh God," I gasped, feeling bile rise in my throat. I had to leave now. I sprinted back toward the way I came, but as I turned, another shadow shot past me, blocking my path. This one was unmistakably real, taking on a solid form. Someone was in the house. I froze again, wide-eyed and holding my breath. I couldn't see anything clearly, just the outline of a figure shifting in the dim light. My heart thundered in my ears as it moved closer, and then I heard a whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "Stay!" It felt like an invocation, and I realized with horror that I wasn't just being watched, I was being pulled into something far beyond my understanding. I felt the air thicken around me as the figure stepped closer, and I instinctively took a step back. My mind raced. I needed to get out of there, but I couldn't turn my back on whatever was in front of me. It felt like a trap, a game with rules I didn't understand. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The shadow paused, almost as if considering my question. I squinted through the dim light, trying to make out more than just a silhouette. Was it human? The longer I stared, the more its edges flickered, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. "Stay!" The voice was softer this time, almost coaxing. It felt like a dark lullaby, both alluring and dangerous. Before I could resist, my feet moved forward, drawn by an unseen force. I shook my head, fighting against the pull. "No! I need to leave!" I yelled, clenching my fists. "Join us!" the figure urged, its voice swirling in the air like smoke. The sound echoed in my mind, making me feel dizzy. It was as if the shadows themselves conspired to wrap around me, urging me to stay and play along with whatever game was afoot. Just then, a sudden flash of light illuminated the room, blinding me for a moment. I blinked rapidly, and the shadowy figure momentarily retreated, melting back into the darkness. I took a deep breath, seizing the opportunity to escape. I stumbled toward the weak beam of moonlight near the broken window. Once I reached the warmth of the light, I steadied myself against the wall. The laughter faded into whispers, yet the sense of urgency lingered. I glanced back at the darkness, half expecting the figure to reappear. Instead, I saw the doll lying where I had dropped it, untouched among the debris. Curiosity warred with fear in my chest. I knew I shouldn't go back, but I was drawn to it. Something about the doll felt vital, as if it held the key to understanding this madness. I took a cautious step toward it, my heart racing. As I bent to retrieve it, memories crashed over me like waves. Days spent in this house, laughter with friends, and the game we played. Where had this all gone wrong? I looked closer at the doll's face, its glassy eyes reflecting the remnants of what used to be innocent fun. Suddenly, I felt a breeze sweep through the room, chilling the air around me. The whispers returned, now frantic, mingling with overlapping voices. "Help us! Find us!" they cried out. "Wait!" I shouted, desperation creeping into my tone. "What do you want me to find?" At that moment, the mirror flickered again. This time, I didn't see the children's faces. Instead, I saw a door. My door, the one I remembered entering as a child, the one that led to the basement. That door hadn't been there before. A sense of dread twisted in my stomach. The voices beckoned me, this time with dull thuds of urgency. "We need you." I backed away from the mirror, heart pounding. My instincts screamed to run, to get out of this house, but something deep down told me I had to uncover the truth. The shadows loomed closer, angrier now, almost as if they sensed my hesitation. Then, as if in answer to my confusion, the shadows surged forward. I spun around, panic setting in as I glanced back at the door that awaited me. I knew I had a choice to make, and the wrong decision could lead to consequences I couldn't comprehend. I took a deep breath. If I wanted to end this, I had to confront it head-on. So, I turned and headed toward the door, but the house seemed to tremble, as if it was preparing to bar my way. That's when I saw a flicker of light coming from the basement. The flicker of light beckoned me, an eerie invitation that sent shivers down my spine. I hesitated at the top of the staircase leading to the basement. The whispers intensified, a chorus of urgency that gnawed at my resolve. "Help us!" they cried again, each voice distinct yet overlapping, creating a haunting melody that made my skin crawl. My gut clenched as I took a tentative step down, the wooden planks creaking underfoot. The air grew colder, and I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in on me. As I reached the bottom, the flickering light revealed a dimly lit room. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by a lone bulb swinging from the ceiling. Shelves lined the walls, filled with old toys, abandoned books, and forgotten memories. But it was the source of the light that caught my attention, a small lantern sitting on a table, glowing fiercely despite the absence of a flame. I felt drawn to it, a strange pull that urged me closer. "What are you?" I whispered, stepping nearer, heart pounding in my chest. The warmth emanating from it felt comforting amidst the chilling atmosphere. I reached out, fingers brushing the cool metal, and it flickered like a flame had ignited within. In that moment, the room transformed. The shadows stretched and twisted, melding into forms I could almost recognize, children with bright smiles, their laughter intertwining with the whispers. Faces I had known, friends from so long ago, filled my mind. But their eyes were vacant, pleading. "Help us!" they begged again, frustration creeping into their tone. My breath hitched as I stumbled back. I had to shake it off. This couldn't be real. They were gone, lost, just like my carefree days in this house. "Why can't you just leave me alone?" I shouted, frustration boiling over. The laughter quieted, replaced by a deep, unsettling silence. Then, one voice emerged from the stillness, distinct and clear. "Find the key." "Find the key?" I echoed, uncertainty draping over me like a heavy fog. "What key?" Suddenly, the shelves rattled as if shaking the answers loose. I stepped back, scanning the darkness. A sense of urgency electrified my body. If this was about a key, then maybe that meant a way out. I refused to be trapped here anymore. As if answering my silent resolve, the lantern's glow brightened, illuminating a hidden compartment at the base of one shelf. I moved closer and pulled it open, revealing a small, ornate box. The wood was intricately carved, and it seemed to pulse with energy, a stark contrast to the stillness of the room. With trembling hands, I opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a small key. It looked old, but the metal shimmered in the light, inviting me to take it. I lifted it carefully, a rush of adrenaline coursing through me. At that moment, the whirling whispers crescendoed into a wail, filled with anguish. I felt the walls of the room closing in, battering against my senses. "You must hurry," they cried. "Before it's too late." I shoved the key into my pocket, my heart racing. Whatever lay ahead felt more dangerous than ever. I had to find out what the key unlocked. I moved toward the staircase, determined but scared. The basement behind me seemed to pulse with energy, shadowy figures swirling around the lantern as if trying to keep me from leaving, but I wouldn't be stopped. I climbed back up the steps, knowing I was closer to uncovering the truth. As I reached the top, something shifted in my peripheral vision. My breath caught. The door to the basement slammed shut, locking me out with a finality that sent dread pooling in my stomach. I was now trapped in the hallway, the sound of voices fading into the darkness below. Then, without warning, the house trembled again. I turned, the shadows from the basement stretching out toward me, and I realized there was no escaping this game. I stood frozen in the hallway, my mind racing. The door lay firmly shut, blocking whatever had stirred in the basement. My heart pounded with the feeling of being watched. Shadows coiled in the corners of the room, creeping closer, and I could almost hear their whispers again, urging me to act. What do I do now? I muttered to myself, feeling the weight of the key heavy in my pocket. I couldn't shake the feeling that it held the answers I desperately needed. I turned to the hallway, trying to push away my panic. The narrow space was dim, lined with faded photographs of smiling faces. But in that moment, they felt like specters, their eyes following me, questioning my every move. I shook my head to clear the intrusive thoughts and walked toward the end of the hallway. There was a door there, a heavy wooden one, similar to the one I had just closed behind me. It seemed untouched by time, its surface smooth but splintered at the edges. I hesitated. Was this what the voices meant? As my hand rested against the door, the whispers grew louder. "Unlock it," they urged, desperation flooding their tones. "He's coming." "Who's coming?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, even though I knew I wouldn't get an answer. I glanced back toward the staircase, convinced I had felt a presence behind me, but the hallway remained empty. Taking a deep breath, I reached for the key again. It felt cold like ice despite the warmth of the lantern still flickering in my memory. I inserted it into the rusty keyhole and turned it slowly. The door creaked open, revealing a room shrouded in darkness. I stepped inside, expecting to find something significant. Instead, I found a dust-covered attic filled with old boxes and cobwebs glistening in the dim light filtering through a single, grimy window. The air was stale, thick with the scent of neglect. As I moved deeper into the room, I noticed a trunk tucked away in the corner. It was larger than the rest, ornate like the box that had held the key. My hands shook as I approached, curiosity overshadowing my fear. I knelt and lifted the lid, wincing at the creaking hinges. Inside lay an assortment of forgotten objects, dolls with cracked porcelain faces, clothes that smelled of mildew, and some yellowed letters. But what caught my eye was an old, faded photograph on top. It showed a group of children standing in front of a house that looked remarkably familiar, the very house I was in now. My heart raced. I recognized faces in the photo, kids I had played with many summers ago. But then I noticed something odd. One child stood off to the side, half hidden in shadow, a grim expression on his face. His eyes seemed so alive, so intent on something far beyond the frame. I picked it up, feeling a shiver crawling down my spine. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated from downstairs, shaking the floor beneath me. My breath caught in my throat. I needed to get out. Find the key, their voices echoed again, but now they sounded different, more urgent. Then everything went dark. The lantern's glow from memory faded like a dying ember. The attic was now cloaked in shadows, and a sense of foreboding rolled over me. This place was alive, and it was displeased. Panic surged through me. I rushed to the door, but the moment I turned the knob, I realized it wouldn't budge. The whispers turned into wails, the space around me throbbing with energy. They wanted something. I could feel it. But what? As I slammed my shoulder against the door, I felt the distinct weight of unseen eyes closing in. The air crackled with unseen tension. Get out! They screamed, and that S when everything went cold. The cold hit me like a wave, leaving my skin crawling. I stepped back from the door and scanned the room for another exit. The whispers had transformed into shouts, echoing in my mind. I needed to stay calm. Panic wouldn't help me find a way out. That I turned my back to the door and focused on the trunk. Might it hold something useful? I dropped to my knees again, my hands shaking, and began rifling through the jumble of objects. The dolls felt wrong, their gazes too intense, almost accusatory. I pushed them aside, uncovering more letters. I grabbed one at random, the paper brittle beneath my fingers. The handwriting was small and hurried. It was a letter addressed to someone named Henry. My eyes darted over the text. It spoke of secrets buried and promises broken. I swallowed hard, every word tightening the knot in my stomach. Something was wrong here, and I felt the weight of history pressing in on me. Then I heard a soft rustling, like footsteps on the floorboards below. My heartbeat quickened. Someone was in the house. I peered toward the attic door, wishing for it to open, wishing to escape. The thought of confronting whatever was making its way through this old building made bile rise in my throat. That I shoved the letter back into the trunk and decided it was time to try the door again. The knob felt different this time, almost warmer. I twisted it, hoping for a miracle. It turned, but it didn't spring open. Grunting with frustration, I looked for anything to help me force it. That S when I noticed the edge of a rusty crowbar sticking out from beneath a pile of damp cloth. I pulled it out, its weight reassuring in my hands. With renewed determination, I wedged it against the door frame and pushed hard. The door rattled and, with a mighty heave, swung wide open. Light poured into the attic, illuminating the shadows that seemed to retreat just a little. I stepped forward, half glad to be free, but then froze. From the corner of my eye, I saw the child from the photograph. He stood at the edge of the room, watching. My breath caught again. "What do you want?" I stammered, not sure if I was addressing the fading figure or my own fears. "Help," he whispered, his voice faint, but urgent. I blinked, and he was gone. My heart raced. The letters, the whispers, they all pointed to someone who needed me, and the sensation throbbed within me. I couldn't leave without understanding what tied him to this place. That I stepped into the hallway, adrenaline pushing me onward. The energy crackled angrily around me, and I could have sworn I felt the walls tremble with anticipation. I glanced back at the darkness of the attic, pondering what I had left behind. "Find the key," the whispers echoed, now more insistent. That I didn't know what key they referred to. I had no time to decide. Someone was still down there, and I felt an urgency to discover who they were and what had happened. My mind raced as I ventured down the rickety staircase, every creak amplifying the weight of silence surrounding me, but as I descended, a chill shot through the air, and I was certain I wasn't alone. I took a cautious step onto the ground floor when the front door slammed shut, echoing through the house with a thunderous finality. I was trapped inside, and whatever was lurking in the darkness was getting closer. I stood in the dim light of the entrance hall, my heart pounding in my chest. The shadows closed in, wrapping around me like a living entity, and I felt the oppressive weight of fear pressing down. I could hear faint whispers again, insistent and urgent, and I instinctively looked back towards the attic. I could still see the remnants of the child's pleading gaze. "Help us," they echoed again, swirling around me. In a panic, I rushed forward but hesitated at the hallway where I noticed a draft. The air felt heavy there, heavy with something I couldn't quite grasp. I took a deep breath and moved closer to the nearest door on my right. My hand trembled on the knob, it felt unusually warm, almost as if it had a heartbeat. I swung the door open, revealing a small living room. Dust motes danced lazily in the shafts of light filtering through the grime-covered windows, but the air was stifling with silence, pregnant with the echoes of laughter that had once filled this space. The remnants of a family's life scattered across the floor: a broken toy, an old newspaper, a yellowing photograph, that same haunting image of the smiling children. Everything blurred together as I took a step inside, desperate to understand. Suddenly, I heard a sound behind me, the unmistakable creaking of the front door, now ajar. A surge of instinct propelled me forward, but before I could make a decision, the whispers fractured into a sudden cacophony. "Find him. You must find him." Without thinking, I sprinted back out into the hallway, where shadows danced in the periphery of my vision. I could feel a presence behind me, something cold and menacing. Yet I pressed on, charging towards the basement door, that same door I had previously locked. My heart raced. The key! The key in my pocket! It was time. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through me, urging me to move faster. I fumbled for the key, nearly dropping it as I found myself outside the door. It felt heavier, more potent now, as if it contained all the answers I sought. As I inserted the key into the lock, the atmosphere shifted. The house quaked, the walls vibrating with an angry surge, almost as if the house itself was alive, pushing back against my efforts. I turned the key, and with a groan, the door creaked open. The basement was cloaked in darkness, save for the glow of that strange lantern I had encountered before. I stepped inside to find the room alive with spectral figures, their faces distorted by fear and desperation. They reached for me, their mouths forming the timeless plea, "Help us. Help us find the door." "What door?" I yelled, panic splicing through my resolve. But the atmosphere thickened, amplifying their anguish into a whirlwind of overlapping voices. I felt myself breathe it in, the weight of all their stories wrapping around me. And then, amidst the clamor, I saw him, a small figure in the shadows, the boy from the photograph. His eyes were wide, pleading, pulling me with a silent urgency toward the back of the basement. I followed, instincts driving me as I navigated past toys and remnants of a life. At the back wall stood a faded door, unlike any I had seen before, shrouded in dust and cobwebs. The boy turned, his lips barely forming words, "Please." I stepped up to it, heart racing, and without thinking, I flung the door open. Light poured out, illuminating a vivid scene of laughter and warmth, a world the children had inhabited before tragedy silenced them. But it was not the paradise I expected. Instead, it felt like a mirage, an illusion tugging at the corners of reality. "Come!" they cried, that familiar echo entwining with the warmth of nostalgia. As I stepped further into the light, I felt a surge, as if everything I'd been through was about to culminate in something monumental. Then the door slammed shut behind me, plunging me into darkness once more. The voices faded, replaced by the unsettling quiet that echoed throughout the house. I turned, confused, the weight of my surroundings pressing against me. Did I really find them? I took a shaky breath. I was alive, free. In that moment, I felt the rush of relief as the pressure lifted, though uncertainty slithered back in. I stumbled away from where the door had been, grappling with the echoes of freedom and sorrow, lost in the ambiguity of what had just transpired. That I walked away from the house, its facade looming behind me, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that some part of me remained tethered within those walls. I never sought the truth about the children again. Finding the key had led me down a path I was not prepared for. Back to my life, I often thought of that house, of the echoes, of the innocent eyes that once watched me, and the child who had silently begged me to help him. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I could still hear whispers, not of anguish but of fleeting joy, reminding me of the fine line we dance upon between reality and the unknown. Did I ever truly escape? Or had I become a part of the quiet tragedies that flowed within that house? I suppose I'll never know.